All right, so today we are checking out the line tool. Might seem pretty simple, but there's actually quite a bit to it, and it's kind of the foundation to a lot of other drawings that you'll do. So with our line tool, we can choose it from up here, or we can also type in LIN, and then it comes to the top of our choices, enter into it. So we can specify our first point, so we want to give it an absolute point. So we could say 0, 0, and that's going to be on there at the bottom. I'm going to draw this line, and then it'll just let us continually draw lines that are connected. You can hit the right mouse button and enter, and then that'll exit out of the tool. Another thing you can do is hit escape once you're done, and then that'll allow you to exit out of the tool as well. So this line, I'm going to select it here, and it's going to tell us a little bit about the line in this box here. It tells us it's on a hidden layer and gives us our line type and length. If we just had one selected, it would tell us the length of the single segment. But since I have all these selected, it's going to give us all this other information. Talk more about layers in another video. I'm going to switch these to the object layer. So just by selecting them and then selecting the layer that's correct for them, it'll switch them over. Let's say I draw just a random line out here in space in this object layer. I know that it needs to start there, but I know that it needs to be 3 units long, and I actually know what I want for my angle as well. So I'm going to tab over to this angle, and I'm going to say it needs to be 31 degrees, and it'll draw that for me. Again, selecting this line gives us information, so the length is 3. We get these grips here too, so I can grab these grips, and we can move the line. And if we realize that it's not long enough, or if we need to stretch or lengthen the line, you can do that as well. So we can give it a relative coordinate to where it was. So let's say we need to be an additional 2. It'll draw that out for us. So you might have noticed when I was drawing these lines, it's snapping to these points. So I have restrict cursor to specified angles on, so polar tracking. So that's going to track to these angles that I've selected. So if I'm using 45s, 90s a lot, it's nice to have. Another thing is we can turn this one off, and then we can come over here. And if I'm just drawing a lot of right angles, we can restrict the cursor orthogonally. And so it's just giving us horizontal and vertical lines. So I'm going to go ahead and erase some of these. So with the erase tool, you can box around stuff, or to get more information about the erase tool, we can hit the question mark, hit enter, and it tells us what's going on with the erase tool. So it's expecting a window, which is that first thing we were doing. You could type in last, and it'll delete the last thing. One thing I like to do is use the fence tool. So I'm going to say fence, enter that in. So now I can draw a fence line through whatever I want to erase. So if I want to be kind of picky and get in here and grab certain things, I can do that. And then I'm just going to hit enter and then confirm it again, and it's going to get rid of those lines. So we have the modification and we have the line. We got different ways to draw it and different ways to modify it once it's already drawn. If you hit the drop-down box here from draw, we're going to switch over to Xline. So you can type in Xline, or you can select it from up here. So the construction line gives us reference lines, which is nice. If we have a bunch of reference points, we're given a bunch of dimensions for our drawing. I like to do these in a different line type. So we'll switch them to this hidden layer. And down here, we see X-line options. So we have horizontal, we have vertical. So I'm going to put in some horizontal lines, and I know that they need to be 2 up from the bottom. So as I move up, you can see these X and Y coordinates move around. Let's tab over and use that 2 from the bottom. We're going to actually choose the offset tool now, which is this one right here. So offset is going to allow us to draw another line that's offset from the one that we select. So let's say we need it to be 2 again. So we can type in 2, which was already in there, but we'll tell it that needs to be from this line. And then we got another reference line. So these lines just go off into infinity. You can clean those up later, but first, let's draw some vertical lines. Let's just say that we know we need to have some vertical lines in here. We got a center line, and we know that we need to be offset from that one, 2 as well. So we're going to choose it, and then we just specify a side of that line. So let's say that side, and then if I click that line again, it'll just keep me in this 2, and I can just keep doing it. So if I know I need to draw a bunch of lines, I can just keep doing this. This is a good way to like get reference points going at the beginning. So these lines are just construction lines, reference lines. They go off into infinity. If you want to clean those up and get rid of them, another thing you can do is you can trim those away. So since these boxes are closed in here, I can just go through and trim away the points that are sticking out past. And it'll no longer be just off into infinity. But these reference lines are really nice to have. Construction Xline, great tool. And now that we have those drawn, what we can do is go in and now draw lines that use those reference points. So I can just go in, snap to these points. Reason I'm able to snap to all these points is because I have object snap on. I usually like to have endpoint through extension on, perpendicular, tangent, but you can play around with which ones you like to have on. A lot of choices there to choose from. So these reference lines are really nice to have. They allow you to make drawings if you have, limited information about dimensions of everything, but you have some reference points. This helps you get a starting point. So really handy to have. And then one last thing about layers that you can do is you could actually go back then and turn off that hidden layer. So once you've drawn your object using those reference lines, we can then freeze it and we won't see it. So it'll just disappear. Kind of cool to have, and hope that helps.